My name is Jenna Ash. I'm the Chief Academic Officer at College of Law, and today we have the fabulous team from Tyler Wren here with us to present you some tips and tricks from the recruiter's perspective when you're looking for your first legal role. So we've partnered with Tyler Wren to deliver a series of these webinars with the aim of providing you with information as you launch your legal careers. This is the first of the series. Before I introduce the Tyler Wren team, just a couple of notices from me. You'll notice that this webinar is being recorded. We have had a lot of interest in the session, and there are a few people that haven't been able to participate live. So we will be sending that recording out to those people after this. Once we get underway, if I could ask that if you've got any questions as we go through today's session, could you ask them in the Q&A section of the webinar? So not the chat, but there's another button that says Q&A. That's where we'll be monitoring questions, and that will just enable us to make sure that we capture everything in the one place. And just lastly, the slides and the speaker notes from today will be sent to you afterwards, so you don't have to scroll furiously. You'll get all of that in your email afterwards. So my absolute delight to introduce the speakers from Tyler Wren to you here today. So we've got Lisa Gray and Ben Holloway. Lisa is the founder of Tyler Wren and a partner there. She's an absolute bundle of energy. Ben is the manager of the legal team in Christchurch. Ben and I have only just gotten to know each other over the last couple of months, but I also can tell he's a ball of fun and he knows his trade. So I'm sure that you're going to love hearing from them both today. So over to the two of you.
Thank you, Jenna. So I'll start with just see if we can skip to the next slide. There we are. So that's the both of us. I guess the biggest question for most of you will be, where can I find my first role? So I'll start by covering off some of the areas that you can explore to define that. So obviously there's some bullet points there, but I'll dig a little bit deeper into that as well. So membership bodies are a great place to start. So the law association, so they have their own notice board, is heavily utilized by small to medium-sized firms. So that is a good place to keep a look at. The New Zealand Law Society also have a portal for legal roles and often have dedicated law clerk and graduate vacancies. So they're two really good places to look. The university career hubs. Obviously university portals as well. So a lot of the law firms will go out to the universities with grad recruitment in mind. So staying on top of those as well. They often feature entry-level roles. So looking at those. There is a website called Prospel. So this is a resource for structured graduate programs. So they have intakes on there as well. So, and then of course the College of Law job boards. So I'm keeping an eye on those. There are the more traditional places to look like Seek and LinkedIn. Obviously, they have a variety of roles. They're not just grad roles, but you will find grad roles on there as well. So if you have a with Seek, there will be periods which are busier than others. So, for example, a lot of the larger firms, the top tier firms, they are all doing a grad intake at the moment. So you will actually see a lot of grad adverts on Seek at the moment. If you are looking to work for those top tier firms, I would really emphasize on making those applications in the coming week or so. This is a busy period for those firms. So looking on Seek and looking on various other places as well. So like their employers' websites. So a lot of those larger firms will have a dedicated space for job adverts for graduates to apply as well. So looking at those websites. Other places, LinkedIn, you may see some graduate jobs on LinkedIn as well. So that's the job boards. There are a couple of others like Drawer and stuff like that as well, but they're sort of not as popular in that space. Another really important thing to consider at this point in your career is your network. So creating LinkedIn, having a LinkedIn profile, connecting with fellow grads, but also other professionals that you may have come across, whether that's within obviously university or outside of university. So really building that network, looking at also events. So if there's any sort of events that you can get involved in where you're going to rub up against partners or senior people within those organizations. I did sort of jump past, apologies, also approaching employees directly as well. So actually reaching out to law firms directly with a phone call. So not being afraid to pick up the phone and have a conversation with them directly is also a really good way to approach things as well. So going back to the network, so making sure that you're building that network really early in your career won't just help you now, but will also help you later in your career. People that you've gone to university with will obviously end up in different organizations, different places, and they're good people to lean on in the future as well. So voluntary work's also useful. So like community law groups or maybe sort of looking into the Citizen Advice Bureau and places like that, just basically trying to get any sort of experience within law that you can, maybe even going as far as volunteering within a law firm to sort of sit alongside, or shadow somebody more senior than yourself. So that's sort of where I would start looking. One of the areas potentially not to look at this stage in your career, which is funny coming from myself, would be recruiters. Recruiters, we're usually tasked with looking for people with 1 to 2 years experience. So going directly and looking at direct applications are far more productive at this point in your career. After that 2-year PQE onwards, that's when things start to change. So, yeah, that's a little bit about where I would start in looking for your first role.
Thanks, Jenna. So first of all, guys, thanks all for joining again. Even though Ben said, we're probably not going to be able to help you at this point in your career, we can offer advice. We're very bought into working with you guys. So yeah, so if you're looking for any support or general advice, feel free to reach out. All of the questions that we're covering today, by the way, have come from you guys. So we're hoping that you see some relevance here as well. Again, if there is anything after the Q&A session that you're thinking, oh, I'm not quite sure about this, again, feel free to reach out to Jen and myself or Ben. So to cover off which organizations are hiring, this is where it can get really overwhelming because there are so many organizations that are still looking for individuals at your level. And I guess we've split this down into categories for you guys. Our smaller general practices that normally have up to about 4 partners. They will bring in a couple or maybe one individual like yourself a year. What's really great about these guys is that you're hands-on from day one. You're getting support from not just obviously partners, but from really experienced legal executives, from other lawyers who you can listen to and very much learn on the job. Jobs look like legal assistant, junior conveyancing clerks, law clerks, and then obviously that kind of junior solicitor post. This role is quite an interesting one because of AI, that kind of stuff, which we'll cover moving forward. That might change a little bit moving forwards, but again, we'll address that later. So the second group in terms of law firms that will be hiring, obviously your mid-tiers and your large firms, graduate law clerks, often rotating through specific teams. Yes, you get way more structure, way more kind of programmed process through that, building up a really nice peer group and being able to lean on your colleagues more on the experiences that they're receiving. And again, that very much creates that linear path through that kind of career. That, I guess, also covers your top tiers as well. And as Ben's already mentioned, get applying if that's something that you want to do. Other paths include in-house. And I think people immediately think in-house junior counsel. Yes, that is one job title within an in-house. And when I say in-house, I mean within a commercial business that you can look at. But there are other job titles that do require legal knowledge, legal skills, that legal mindset. For instance, within a construction firm, they have huge contracts. Within software businesses, you'll often find contract and commercial experts that very much work on kind of supplier agreements, customer agreements, etc. Or you might find yourself in more of a kind of general commercial team where those legal skills can be used. There's also some slightly quirkier roles, for instance, the trustees, that there are big trust businesses that also look for people with legal experience from day one too. You'll obviously work with either legal experts or those who have a legal or commercial mindset, which again, can really benefit your career, just going down a slightly different avenue, especially if you're not 100% sure as to what it is you want to do, building out those foundational skills. Our other space is obviously the public sector and crown entities, law clerk, judges clerk, court registry officers, but also I guess within your government entities, there are various other positions that you can consider there. Again, if you're thinking litigation, if you're thinking public law, might be still too early for you to work out if that's absolutely what you want to do. But if it is, to jump into something like that will give you some really valuable experience if you're kind of laser focused there. We also have a financial services team in Tyler Wren, and we often see those with legal qualifications and maybe a bit of experience moving sideways into larger organizations within their compliance, risk, company secretarial, regulatory. Those that have got law or a combination degree, those roles tend to work really, really well. But also, I guess you can switch into something totally different, like marketing around that kind of privacy, that privacy side of things. So lots and lots to think about in terms of what area you can go into. And again, we're happy to offer advice if you're not quite sure. One thing that I always say to lawyers at this point of their career, work out what it is you really enjoy. I think we do talk to a lot of people that they want to do criminal because it's all over the TV and everyone's really excited about watching, Suits, which probably is a little bit too old for you guys to remember, but those kind of Law and Order type programs. Think about if your personality and if your skills actually sit within that characteristic, or think what is it about what you've studied so far and what you've learned about yourself so far that you want to apply into a job.
Good stuff. Thanks, Lisa. So the next part is what stands out to recruiters. So by recruiters, we're obviously referring to the internal recruiters at this stage in the career. So the people that your applications are going to directly. So there's a couple of things. So obviously we'll start with the CV. So the CV is the first thing that most law firms are going to see about you. So it's I guess nailing the non-negotiables in that CV and treating it like your first legal draft. So within law, obviously, spelling, grammar, having something that's really clean and easy to read is probably the most important thing. So the formatting needs to be, relatively basic, nothing too crazy. Don't try and create something that stands out in having like a landscape CV, for example. It will just come across as weird and a bit abnormal. So you actually kind of want to follow the trend a little bit and let the words on the CV sort of shine rather than the formatting. So with that, there's a couple of things. So stating your timeline clearly. So place your expected admission dates right at the top. So there's essentially no guessing by anyone when they look at your CV when you'll be available. So for example, currently completing profs, expected admission date November 2026. It's really clear as to your situation. Terming, I guess, leveraging any work experience you've already got. So it's likely not to be within law. That's understandable. But what sort of work have you done either while studying or pre-studying? Is any of that sort of administrative work? Is any of it transferable? Support roles, for example, admin. Whilst it's not obviously you're not in law, it still is a part of the job. So really highlighting those things. Within most recruiters in any industry, they're going to be looking for stability. So again, if you've done something and stuck at it for a period of time, really emphasizing that as well on the CV. So that could be anything from a charity thing you're doing, or even even if it's just a job outside of studying that's been for a couple of years. It might not seem relevant to law, but if you've stuck at something for a couple of years, it's important. Any experience that you've had with AI as well. AI is a big buzzword at the moment, so keeping that in there. So obviously, if you're a second career lawyer, then obviously talking heavily about what you've done in your previous career and looking for areas that you can what is transferable into the role you're doing at the moment. If you are creating a CV, again, sort of touching back on what I said before, be creative. You do want to stand out. So talking about yourself and your interests and so forth, but don't be too creative. So we don't want big colors and pops of images, loads of photographs, that sort of thing. Will go against you. Your CV should really align to this practice area that you're looking to go to. So, for instance, if you're applying for a commercial or corporate role, highlight your academic record in highly relevant subjects. So, contract law, company law, and talk about those in the CV as well. And showcase sort of any, I guess, cross-disciplinary strengths that you might have as well. So if you studied in any special topics or hold a dual degree, that accelerates your commercial understanding, then obviously, I guess, focusing on that within the CV as well. And if you've had any legal experience, obviously highlighting that and putting that towards the top of your CV. I think that was the majority of what I had to cover.
Yep, sounds good. The only other thing that I'd add on that, thanks, Ben, is get references. And I don't think that we've talked about it probably enough, but one thing that would make you stand out from others is if you've actually got some really good written references, either from a charity you've worked at or from an ex-employer or from even someone who's in the legal profession who can vouch for your character, or that you've done like a little bit of seconding work to. Yes, we don't want the CV to be War and Peace, but at the same time, it's really good just to try to put yourself head and shoulders a little bit more than who you're competing against for a potential role. So we actually had a section to cover regarding cover letter tips and pointers. So we probably just want to touch on that first, Jenna, if that's okay with you. Yep, great. So again, I don't want to repeat everything that Ben's just gone through, but if you're writing a cover letter, a lot of what we see is rinse and repeat. And what I mean by that is we receive the same cover letter, people talking about just themselves and using really, really big words, but not any insight as to why they actually want to work for a particular partner or work in a particular area or for a particular business or for a particular team. So our, I guess, tips and pointers in terms of cover letter is to really think about what you're trying to demonstrate to the reader of this letter as to why you should be selected for this job. So if if your grades are a little bit light, or you've got or you've maybe not done as much in terms of gaining legal experience as what you should have, think about how you can demonstrate a level of knowledge and a level of research and actual effort into your cover letter. Are you going and looking at news articles about a particular firm or cases that someone's been involved in, or if you're looking at planning the latest changes within RMA, or why your skills seem suited to that. So the more unique you can make each of your cover letters, which I know sounds like a pain in the backside, but you're better off doing a qualitative document rather than just rinse and repeating the same stuff. We see it all the time and it's really boring. So really think about how you can make that stand out. Key things to add, as Ben said, admission day availability. And then I guess don't overdo it. So get your point across as to why you want to work in that area. Get your point across in terms of what you know about them and how that relates to your background and experience, and then how you feel you would be a great fit to that firm. So keep it quite succinct. Jenna has said that I think we've got these notes available, so you guys can use those if I've gone through that a little quickly. And then in terms of the CV, again, I don't want to keep repeating what Ben's saying, but we see mistakes on CVs all the time from individuals that are way more experienced than you. So genuinely go through your CV with a fine-tooth comb. Make sure that there are absolutely no grammatical errors whatsoever. The other thing is yes, we are going into a world of AI, but we can also spot an AI CV, and most readers, I think, can spot when AI is used. We're not saying don't use it, but be clever about it. Make sure your personality is down on the page, as well as showing that you can use those tools as well. As we've said, don't hide your survival jobs. Show that you've got tenure, show that you've got stickability, show the academic record, but do it strategically. So if you're going for a commercial role, show your grades in contracts. But again, as we've said, keep it concise, keep it conservative. I guess the only other thing that we've said is, don't use photos, don't use graphics, but also don't use a crazy font. No one needs to see old Roman on a CV. Arial, Calibri, and a couple of others are way safer. I think that's that bit covered, Jenna, maybe a bit too much.
Good stuff. I will add to that. Obviously, AI is more is used more and more now. A couple of things to watch if you are using AI is, firstly, for hallucinations. Most of us that use AI know what that means. AI isn't always right, so make sure you're reading it through before you're submitting. Secondly, if you're copying and pasting it, you're not copying ChatGPT says this. Make sure that's not there. And then the other thing that's quite common is obviously the Zs instead of the S's, and just a few grammatical things that might come through as looking correct in an American CV, but isn't in New Zealand or isn't how we normally do things. So AI is great, but just make sure you're checking those things and reading everything, not just relying on what it gives you, because we can see those a mile off. So, but in terms of how does recruitment actually work? So we kind of split this into two parts. So big law, which is obviously those sort of top tier firms, and then the smaller suburban firms below that. So with big law, recruitment is highly structured. It's usually driven by a dedicated HR team. They hire in strict cycles, relying heavily on summer clerkship programs to fill their future graduate roles. So the process can be a bit of a marathon, to be fair. Expect multi-stage panel interviews, psychometric testing, and a big focus on your grades, your academic transcript, and corporate polish. So they're usually looking to lock in talent well in advance, because those top tier talents are highly sought after across all those top tiers. So again, just to touch on what I said earlier, that process is happening now. So if that is where you want to go, then you need to sort of be on those websites and making those applications as we speak. With smaller suburban firms, obviously that's a little bit of a different process. So smaller practices are usually usually hire because they're busy, and they need people now to help with their workflow. The process is much more relaxed and informal. You'll often sit down for a chat over a coffee directly with the partners, as opposed to going through multiple phases through HR. They will look at your grades, although they do care more about cultural fit. They're smaller offices, so you fitting into the business is more important, and your practical common sense. So whether you're ready to sort of roll your sleeves and basically take the pressure off the team that already exists from day one. So these firms often take people that are already known to their network, which is why it's important to build up your connections as early as possible.
If I can just add on
Yeah.
that as well. Obviously, we've covered the traditional kind of law routes there. We've obviously talked about careers maybe adjacent to law, government, into commercial. Obviously, they will have all very different recruitment processes. What we tend to do is suggest to people, ask what the recruitment process is going to look like. Ask how many stages there will be, if there's testing, if you need to do assessments, that kind of thing. Employers are very comfortable telling you that kind of information, and it just really helps you assess what those timelines and what to prepare for.
Thank you both. That was wonderful. We're actually moving into the Q&A section now. We also had a couple of questions come through as people registered for this, so I will also ask those. Let's start with some of the ones that are on the screen in the Q&A piece. So can you give some information for overseas lawyers who are looking for legal roles? So these are obviously already practicing or already admitted.
Yeah. Do you want me to take that one, Ben?
Yeah.
Cool.
That'd be good.
Oh, it's a tricky one. We have been advocating for overseas lawyers for many, many years to try to get more of their qualifications recognized. It's an uphill battle, but we have found it difficult as recruiters looking for those people with experience. We've really struggled to help overseas qualified lawyers. But what we have seen is individuals, as I've said, going into more of those law adjacent roles. We have seen a fair bit of that in terms of compliance, regulatory, and working more so in those fields, that kind of governance, company secretarial, whilst requalifying. What we do find is that once a lawyer has requalified, their experience, getting that kind of first foothold in the market, once that's done, then their previous experience, depending on which country they have qualified in, does come into account. And obviously those skills that they've built up in terms of consulting with clients, the technical, I guess, the mechanics of drafting can still very much be related into New Zealand, but it is quite a tough path, and we have found that a bit of a sideways move has been a lot easier than going straight into mainstream law. Does that answer the question, Jenna?
I think so. And I think just on that, talking about the sideways move, we've had a couple of questions come through around do I need to focus on, do I need to choose my practice area now that I will be in for the next 20 years? How easy is it to switch between practice areas once I've started? Is it better to take a job now and find a path into another role in a different practice area later? Can you speak to that?
Ben, you gonna do that one?
Yeah, I can speak to that. I mean, look, we do see lawyers for sure. They do change which path that they are practicing in. I guess the further into your career you are trying to change, then the harder that is. If you've got if you've sort of settled on, say, family law, and you've been within family law for sort of 4 to 5 years, then looking to become a commercial lawyer after 5 years of experience is not straightforward. It's not what you've been doing. Now, there are some transferable skills, of course, but with that, you're likely being remunerated for your experience within family law. So taking that step later on is much harder, which is why we say trying to focus now on what it is that you're interested in. It's much easier at this point in your career. That being said, we do see people change, especially in the 1 to 2 years. It's not a major issue to change, but it can set you back a little bit because essentially you're starting in a new area of law again. So yeah, if you can pin it down now, that's the better. But you can change at a later date. Just don't leave it too late in your career, because then you're taking a step back in other ways.
I think just to add to that, it also can depend randomly on locationally where you're willing to work. So
Sure.
where there is more saturation of people and less jobs, at this point we're seeing that as Wellington, and these cycles change. It's really hard for us to move people's specialisms, for want of a better phrase. But if you're prepared to go work in Dunedin, or a Wanaka or something like that, where there are more jobs and less candidates, the firms are likely to be, and employers in general are likely to be more relaxed about what that experience looks like, and they're willing to train because they simply don't have the candidate pool to kind of review. So they have to become quite creative on that. The other thing I'd add is some practice areas are more relatable than others. So I think Ben put a great point out there, family to commercial would be really difficult. But if you're very early on in your career and you're thinking family into employment, you're dealing with individuals, you're dealing with your problem solving, you're mediating. A lot of those skills are quite transferable. So it really depends on the areas that you're looking to change from and to as well.
Thank you. There's been a couple of questions come through both in the Q&A and previously around creating those networks, and I know the two of you talked about that earlier. But if you are wanting to cold email or reach out to people that you think you might want to work with, or people that you want, or people whose careers you would like to emulate, would you recommend reaching out to them first of all? What's a professional way of doing that? Is it via email, or is there something else that you'd recommend?
I'll take this if that's okay. I'm
Yeah.
just trying to be nice because I know I can talk a lot. I'm just trying to, I think it depends who it is. So there's never a hard and fast rule with this type of thing. I would suggest that if it is, say, for instance, a top four partner who, has a team of X number of people, I would potentially reach out to some of their staff and think and kind of and get to know them and how they work and what the work is like, and then create a more thoughtful, probably email or LinkedIn message to that partner saying that you've actually done your research and that you've actually done some work around that to add a bit more gravity and to add a bit more. They're more likely to pay attention if you come across that you know what you're talking about and you've done your groundwork. So for someone like that, I'd probably do that. If it's for instance, a senior associate, I'd reach out on LinkedIn and connect. I would literally, if it were me, I would be thinking again, volume in terms of learning more about the area that you're looking for as well. So LinkedIn is a fantastic way to kind of build those first connections. If it is a smaller organization, they are looking for people who can business develop eventually and who can build relationships. So they are likely to want you to communicate with them directly, whether that is phoning, if you can't get hold of them, leave a message. Then once you've left a message, send an email saying, hey, look, I tried to call you. I'd love to talk to you in more detail about how I could become experienced enough to work within your firm, or if you would look at me on a voluntary basis, or if I could meet you for a coffee. It's that kind of thing. So it really depends on your audience. But Your best way to do it is put yourself in their shoes. How do you think they'd want you to approach them? And what I tend to find is the corporate aspect tends to be a little bit more formal, and the less corporate want to see that kind of relationship build. Hope that helps.
I would add to that as well, if you're approaching partners at large organizations or firms, if there's multiple partners within the commercial team, is not sending the same message to four partners within the
No.
same team. That's one faux pas, so definitely don't do that. Pick one and approach that partner.
Thank you. Some good tips there. There's a few questions that have come through for people that are coming into law as a second career, and wanting to highlight their previous experience, and they want from the two of you to understand how they best do that, but also how that previous experience can best be leveraged in order to find a role in law. So in particular, there's questions here about in the public sector, and then in more legal tech e-discovery roles. Have you got any further comments on that for the people on the call?
I think we probably need to understand a bit more about their backgrounds in order to see how they can leverage that experience. I think that from kind of like a headline perspective, mid-tier firms, organizations, if you're from a commercial background, and smaller firms love second career lawyers because you've already built up life experience, a level of maturity to client face. You are likely to have done some form of interaction with either clients or stakeholders or people in general, and just have grown a level of credibility that maybe some of your peers haven't quite got there yet because they've kind of gone more down the academic route. So I would say it really depends on what your background is. In terms of the public sector, is that someone from the public sector going into law, or is that someone from a second career wanting to go into the public sector?
No, I think they've got experience in public sector work, policy
Yeah.
roles.
Yeah, really depends what they've actually done. As an example, was that policy, Jen?
Experience, yep.
Yeah.
Policy-based roles.
Yeah, excellent. So we've recently talked to firms that are actually that they specialize in regulatory advisory for both and on the litigious side of things. So defending those that might have some regulatory issues, but also for regulators as well. So an understanding of how those organizations works extremely well within specialist roles. Absolutely. So yeah, we've also placed people from kind of policy into roles once they've got a bit more legal experience in the background. But yeah, that experience, if you are packaging it correctly in terms of how you can use that from a legal perspective, yeah, works really, really well.
Okay. Hopefully that helped. But if you do have any more questions on those, please put some more detail in, and we can also type answers after the session is finished.
Yeah, I think we probably want to take those things offline for specifics.
Yeah. A question around how recruiters are dealing with the volume of applicants. How are they doing that? And then how much are they paying attention to the grades in particular? That seems to be a focus, and then extracurricular activities that are shown on CVs.
Yep. So with each each type of firm is different. So that those top tiers are going to put a real focus on the grades. They are driven by those grades. So they do get obviously high volume of applications, and that is one of the factors they're going to be looking into. So that doesn't mean if you don't have top grades, you can't get into those firms, but it is definitely a major factor. So if you do have good grades, emphasizing that on your CV is important. With those that maybe are not hitting those sort of top grades, the other things that these law firms are going to look for is, firstly, like we said, career lawyers, what experience you've got previously. So if maybe you don't have the top grades, it really is going to be focusing on what else you can bring to the table that perhaps even those with top grades can't bring. So, for example, if somebody's got top grades, doesn't necessarily mean they've got a working experience prior. So, if that is the case for you, is really sort of, I guess, pushing that in the CV. But yes, those top tier firms will focus on the grades and the previous experience. From there downwards, it's a bit of a mixed bag. Like I think I mentioned earlier, a lot of it will come down to also personality. If you've got a small law firm and you've got good grades, but not sort of the top grades, then your personality is probably going to be just as important to make sure that you fit in within the team, and that you're not going to rub somebody up the wrong way within the organization. So that's where as Lisa, I think, mentioned in one of the previous questions, actually reaching out to people and talking, they get a flavor for who you are. And in some cases, that will be more important than grades. But with those top tiers, it is definitely grades.
I also think we do call New Zealand, and I'm English, so I can say this. We do call New Zealand that 2 degrees of separation, and it really is. We know so many people who have secured roles via who they know rather than what they know. So we cannot emphasize that networking and finding out about people, enough. Um, Strangely, well, not strangely, a number of firms that I also represent are actually very interested in whether individuals, for instance, play a musical instrument to a professional level, or perform a sport to a senior level or something of that nature. Apparently, the music thing is around being able to read notes and having the way that the brain functions. I don't know. I'm not that, I'm not a psychologist or whatever, so I'm not sure on that. But certainly that we've definitely seen firms want to hear more about high performance in some other field or in addition to the academic. So that's actually good to highlight.
And with the hobbies as well, when you're putting the hobbies down, think about how they could be perceived. So if it's watching movies and traveling, that's probably looked at as in, well, is this person going to go traveling in a year's time? And so nothing wrong with traveling, but just think about how it could be perceived. Obviously, New Zealanders do travel, so just think about when you're putting those down, does it add value or could it actually be a detractor?
I think that's really important because we've had a couple of questions coming in around how you do talk about personal interests in your CV. How do you make it not too informal? And I think you've just touched on that. It's about figuring out what the value is for the employer when you add those to the list.
It may also be, for example, if you're focusing on a particular partner within a firm and you've done your research, as we suggested, and you found out that they were an ex-semi-professional rugby player, then if you're creating a CV for that firm, having rugby as a hobby is obviously a bonus. So when you're doing a bit of research, seeing is there anything you've got in common with either senior people in the firm or the partner in particular, then I would focus on those things.
Thank you. We've got a couple of questions here which are actually topic for future or previous webinars, but I'm going to just ask you to answer them briefly, and then we can actually send through links to the webinars later. The first is there any advice for people looking for work in Australia? Is there anything you want to touch on there?
Yeah. So we actually have a recruitment partner in Australia. The reason we set that up, and it's been going for about 6 years now, is because we were finding that there was a real knowledge gap between Australian law firms, and they didn't really understand anything except for the big the top tier law firms in NZ, but also the size and scope of the Australian market. New Zealand lawyers were really struggling to navigate that. So we decided to really knowledge build over a 3-year period to understand how that whole market worked. And we have oodles and oodles of knowledge on all the states pretty much, and updated knowledge from our recruitment partner now in Australia on a weekly basis. I actually talk to them and they fill us in terms of what markets are good, who's hiring, who's not, whether that's states. So we just kind of get, we've got a really kind of up-to-date knowledge on that too, as well as the kind of depth of it. And unless you've got 3 years PQE in NZ, you're going to really struggle to secure a role in Australia in a law firm right now. Same for in-house. There is more appetite to hire in Australia across those financial service type roles that I mentioned. They tend to like their applicants direct because they do have very large talent teams that kind of mechanize the processes there. But really, the Australians like you to serve your time and learn your craft first in New Zealand, and ideally in a specialism rather than being broad before heading over the ditch. We are placing about 4 New Zealand qualified lawyers a month from New Zealand into Australia, which doesn't sound like a lot, but we're doing it all the time. I guess it's the easiest way to put it. And by far for us, it's specialists who have got 3 years as a minimum experience up to about 7 years experience. So that's kind of our sweet spot.
Thanks, Lisa. That's really useful. So there's also, if for the person that asked that, we did a webinar a couple of months back, specifically talking about that, how you actually take your admission and your practicing certificate in New Zealand and transfer that over to Australia. And we had a sort of 2 years PQE lawyer come and speak about her experience. So have a look on our website under the career resources for that. And I think we actually also have some of Tyler Wren's resources there.
Yeah.
That speak to that as well.
Yeah, we did a webinar. When did we do that webinar, Ben?
It's about a month ago, so it's on our YouTube. So the recording's there again. So we've got 2 recordings. One's about Australia specifically, and then the other is about a wider field than that as well. So including like the UK and stuff like that. So I think, as Jenna mentioned, it may be something that we cover later on as well here. But we do have some recordings on YouTube that you can look at under Tyler Wren.
So we've had a question come through around tips for interviews. This is actually going to be the subject of an entire session like this in a couple of months with Tyler Wren. But is there any tips that you can provide, your brief tips for people now? There's a question, just in context, it's a question, does it change for big firms compared to smaller firms? Sorry. And then the second question that came in around it was, specifically in terms of like second career lawyers around tips for interviews. Yeah.
In terms of interview tips, I mean, like you said, this is quite a large topic, but if we were to sort of look at interviewing at the top tiers versus the rest, the interview will be different for sure because their processes tend to be different. So as we sort of mentioned before, if you're interviewing at a top tier, there's usually going to be multiple processes. You're likely to meet HR before you meet partners. That's if you meet partners. Again, you may be meeting associates. So it's a very different setup to if you're going to smaller law firms. So I'll start with the smaller law firms. I mean, essentially, more often than not, you'll be talking to the partner directly. It will be much more casual. You're likely to meet at a coffee shop, or it may be in the offices, but will definitely be a much more casual setting. So some tips that work well there is obviously making sure you understand their business. They're not high volume recruiters, so they're going to want to know that you've actually done your research, you've looked at their website, you've dug around LinkedIn and understand as much as possible. So coming across knowledgeable about their business and why you're there, not, they're just one of 4 that you're interviewing at, make them feel special. So that's probably the key for those smaller firms. With the larger ones, realistically, I think it's fair to say if you've got top grades, you will be looking at multiple options. But at the same time, you don't necessarily want to present that way. So again, it's similar, understanding the firm, but your questions are likely to be much more formal. Tell me of a time you've done this, explain a time where you've had exposure to this. Those sort of questions are much more standard in those larger firms, whereas the smaller firms are likely to want to get to know you personally.
Thank you,
Again,
Ben.
we could go on. There's a lot of tips, but I think it is a whole webinar in itself.
Yeah.
Just being prepared is probably the key. Don't go in there not knowing about the firm. They're likely to ask you, "What do you know about us?" That's where you need to be able to answer that question.
Great advice. So we are coming to the end of our time together. There are a number of questions in the chat that are quite specific to individuals. I think what we might ask those people to do is to, if they're interested in continuing the conversation, to email myself or the College of Law, and we can pass it on to Ben and Lisa to get back on those questions if it's appropriate to do so. There's probably one more question that more applicable holistically, which was, is it possible to work part-time in a law firm as a lawyer? And I guess probably thinking about that junior role. Yeah.
Shall I take that, Ben? You cool with that?
Yeah, you can. Yeah, that's good.
The very short answer is no. I think, to be brutally honest, we tend to see part-time roles and flexibility when individuals have built their brand, built their time, built their knowledge. They find, and I think the other thing is that it goes back to that kind of appetite to hire. At the moment, in most regions, there's a good balance between number of jobs and number of candidates. So at the moment, employers don't need to be creative in terms of changing hours or that kind of thing. Every now and again, we'll see a role or we'll hear about a role that's maybe 4 days a week. But to be absolutely transparent, I'd say on the whole, it's unrealistic.
I think, yeah, what you've touched on is if you've been with a firm for 4 years, they know you, you know them, you know your clients, and you've built that business, and you go on maternity leave and come back part-time. Those situations certainly do happen, but it's not the normal to be hired into a part-time role to start with. And even where there is a little bit of appetite, you will likely come second best to somebody who's full-time off the bat in an interview situation, unfortunately.
No, that's good. It's good to have your expectations set up front. Thank you both for your time. That was incredible. So much wisdom, absolute gold. I said at the beginning that you guys know your trade, and that is absolutely the truth. I got a lot out of it, and I hope that everyone else on all of our audience did too. As I said at the beginning, we will be sharing this recording and the speaker notes and the slides with you after the session. Also keep an eye out, because in the next couple of months we will be doing it the next in the series, which is, as we said, on interviewing. Sounds like that's something that will be of value. So keep an eye out in Canvas and in your emails for that. But I thank you, Ben and Lisa, for your time today and sharing all of your knowledge, and I look forward to doing these again. Thank you to everyone that attended today, and we'll hopefully see you in the next one.
Thank you, Jenna. Thanks for allowing Tyler and the opportunity to have such an enthusiastic audience with all those curious questions. It's been great. Thanks so much.
Thank you.